Right. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes.
Lovely. Okay, that is very nice. Right. Today's session is going to be all about the JOSM editor. And we are going to be learning a number of new things today. It's going to be a long session, so hopefully you've got some kind of drink alongside you. Any questions you've got, please either type into the chat or give it to us verbally at a suitable question time. Or if something is really worrying you, then interrupt and we can go back over it so that we can have you. Now, you're not going to remember everything. However, as you heard at the beginning, we are recording this and it will be available to you. So do not panic. There is always something you can go back to and look over again. Right, let's get started. So what are we going to try and achieve today? What we want you to do, unlike the beginner mappers that we train, we want you to actually understand what you're doing. So it's not just being able to draw a building, but to understand why you're drawing it and why you're drawing it like that. So we're going to have a look at JOSM, try looking at some tricky buildings, some roads, some waterways, learn to use the JOSM filters, how to resolve conflicts. We're going to be doing multi-polygons and relations. So I hope you are all wide awake and ready to listen. So let's go have a look. We'll do it somehow in some sort of order like this. Let's start off with the advanced buildings. Right, advanced buildings. What we're looking at is the, first of all, the simple polygon or multi-polygon, shall I say. That's more than one polygon. This is a building polygon, and as you can see on the screen at the moment, let's just see if I can put this in bigger. Right, there we are, larger. That should look okay. Right. So what you're doing, unlike in ID editor, where you had to select the line tool and draw a polygon, a closed line for both of these, and then tag the outer one only. In JOSM, you can use the building tool to create both and then create the multi-polygon. So that is slightly different from in the ID editor. You use your building tool, you create the outside, leave the outside building selected and draw the inner one. That means the inner one will square up exactly along with the outer. So you don't have to juggle around and play around with that. So select both parts, and Control B is the shortcut key to create a multi-polygon of the building. Now, one thing you need to remember and know about multi-polygons is that, unfortunately, unlike in some other programs where you can lock the two into a group, we can't do that on JOSM. So they are still floating free. So if you want to move a multi-polygon, you need to select all the parts of the multi-polygon and move them together. If you don't do that, then you'll leave one or two parts behind and it'll look terrible. Right, so, right, to map an L or U or T-shaped building, you draw the rectangle with your building tool, and along the longest edge of the building tool will give you your greatest accuracy. So start off on the longest side, create your rectangle, and then you select X on your keyboard. So X on your keyboard will give you a new tool. You double click at the point you want to move or you want to segment the side, and then you drag the edge. So the edge gets dragged with the X tool. The X tool stands for the Extrude tool. So you extrude a side, so you move it. Now this is great for drawing, for extending existing buildings that may have a lot of other information and data attached to it. So if it has, you don't want to destroy any of that. So you don't want a conflict. I'll show you what I mean when I go to the examples. Right. Right. Fixing a building. You get a building that is not properly squared. Of course, I think you've learned by now that you select the outline and you press Q on your keyboard. Selecting buildings can also be rotated by holding down your Shift and Control key. But you have to do that while you are in the select mode. So first of all, be in the select mode. Shift and Control will rotate a building. Control and Alt will resize the building. Now it resizes it over its center, so it will reduce down within itself. And then you can use the Extrude tool that we showed you earlier to just tweak and move. But before you use the Extrude tool, please make sure that the building is squared. So press Q on your keyboard before using the Extrude, or it will leave nodes lying all over the place that you don't want. If your building is connected to another building, select the outline, press G, and it will unglue that building from any other features or buildings that it's connected to, in which case you can then move it or alter it as you wish. Right, dense buildings. Mapping each building in a cluster of buildings. Do not map them all in one single building. This is counterproductive. It doesn't help anyone, and it is no good for calculating what is going on in this area. So please, when you are drawing the buildings, try to draw each one. As you can see, different colored roofs help you to identify the different shapes. The shadow is also a good clue as to whether a building is continuous or there's a gap between them. Now, for purposes of ease of identification and ease of fixing and correcting, please leave small gaps between the buildings so that they can be altered and changed rather than connecting them to each other. So using the Control tool with your building tool will prevent it from snapping to the close by nodes. If you want all the buildings to align to each other in a group like this, which is generally the case in a town or city, but not so much in villages. In towns and cities, all you do is the first building that you draw in the line, you leave selected. You don't deselect it. So you leave that selected, and all the other buildings that you draw from that will square up and align with that. Okay, so you don't have to then try and get them all squared to each other. Now, alternately, if you have a group of buildings that are all linked together, if you select all of those and press Q, it will square them all up to each other. So joined up buildings will square up to each other if you have them all selected. Tall buildings. Now, to map tall buildings, you start by mapping the roof area. That may be well set off away from the building footprint. Now, when you look for the footprint, be careful not to decide on the shadow. You need to identify where the actual footprint of the building is, and don't include the shadow in that. So that is one thing that you have to do. Now, as you can see on the building on the right that has been drawn, it covers over the road. You can't see, if you leave the building where it is, the roof where it is, it covers the road. So you can't draw the road because the building's in the way. You have to move the building roof down to its base on the ground so that you can draw the road in alongside it. Okay, now this is one of the main reasons why we move these buildings, so that they are in their correct position on the ground. Okay, now you have to be careful. Sometimes the building is a tall block of offices on top of a shopping mall, and the shopping mall is taller than the block of buildings. So you have to check that the base of the building is the same size as the roof. That's one thing you need to check on. Right. Having now done that, let us now have a look at that in more detail. So let's go to our JOSM. You can see my JOSM on the screen.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, lovely.
Right, so let's just see. Right, let's start off with understanding. Hold on. This is a bit slow, sorry. Oops, there we go. Okay, I'm going to use some imagery. I'm going to switch off this mapping because you don't want to see that. The imagery I'm going to use is Bing. Right, okay. What I want to show you here is this building here. Now, this is the Carlton Center in Johannesburg. And it's a good example in this imagery. You can see that while the base of the building is quite low down, the roof of the building is way across to the side here. So you can see how far the distance is that the one is away from the other. Let's just show you. There is the base of the building down there, and this is the roof of the building. Now, I want to show you this because it is something that is quite interesting. The roof of the building is smaller than the base. You can see that if you have a look at the angle of the side of the building here. Look at that angle compared to this angle. And you can see that they're not precise, that the base is wider than the top. Okay. So that is something that you need to look for. Remember, I said that when you draw, but in most cases, the roof of the building and the base will be quite close or similar. And that you can just adjust because you can see the base and you can adjust the size by using your Extrude Tool and extending the building to the base. Make sure that it doesn't overlap with other buildings, and you are going to be fine. So that is an example of why we need to move the roof of the building so that it lines up with its base. Now I'll show you what is hidden behind. Let's go to another imagery. Let's go to Maxar. Whoops, and you can see that there's another building. This is not part of the roof. Let me just show here. This roof and the little side one down here is two separate buildings, but here it looks like the roof actually belongs to this tall building. That's not the case. Okay, so there is another example for checking different imagery to see exactly what you are drawing. You can see that the building down here is a separate building away from the main block here. Right, right, having shown you that, right, let's choose now. And let's start real mapping. Right, what are we going to look at first is the drawing of complex buildings. Let's choose Bing because Bing is a much sharper imagery. So I will use that. Now, how would we draw something like this? It's quite a complex looking building. It has got little walkways in between linking them. It's got different levels and different heights. So let's just start by using our building tool. So we press B on the keyboard and we choose our longest side, remember. Hold Control so it doesn't snap to anything else and drag it to its extent. Now it's got two little sections sticking out. So I use my Extrude Tool, that's the X, and I double click and move that outwards. Double click and move that outwards. Now we've got this building. I can see that it's offset, but that is also offset by about the same height. So this height of level is the same. So I would not do anything at this stage because different heights of buildings will have to move different distances. So you must make sure that each building that you do to move down to its footprint is carefully checked so that you're not moving a low building too far and a high building too little. Okay, right, let's continue. So we want this walkway across here. Come on. So I extrude that outwards. Now I need to do this side one. So I extrude that outwards. And there's a little section there, so I can do that. There's a section here that I can extrude across. I can bring this. So it's quite quick. We can do this quite quickly and easily. As you can see, it works like a treat. And you don't have to worry about squaring. Right, so we have got this now, and this is also a part of it, so we can add that as well. And that's how quickly you can create a really complex building. And now if I press S on my keyboard to select, I can then move that down onto its footprint. And that is the mapping done. Actually not. I'm going to go back a bit. So another step, because look, we have some courtyards in here. So let's draw those. So I will select that outer because I want this to line up with the outer. I use my building tool and along the longest edge, I create a building Now this is not all the same size, so let's just do X on my keyboard and extrude that, and X and extrude that. Now it's got the same on the other side, so I want to keep this so I want to then draw that, so I use my building tool, and leaving that selected, this will then line up. Use X and X. Now select all of the components and make sure you've got all selected. Now you go up to oh, come on, tools. There we are. You go to tools and you create a multi-polygon or Control B. All of your drop-down menus at the top here are giving you what the shortcut keys are. So Control B creates a multi-polygon, and there you have it. Now remember, I told you that if you want to move this now onto its footprint, and you select just the outer and move that, you can see that the two inner parts have stayed where they are. They have not moved. Okay, so let's go back. I need to make sure that I select all the component parts of the multi-polygon and then move it. Right, and there we are. That has been moved and is done. I take a look and I have a look here and I think, well, I can see that that's not quite right because they've included the side of the building, not just the roof. So there's the roof. So I select the outer, I press Q. Right, now I can move this to its correct size, select, and shift it to its footprint. So just have a look. Sometimes the people draw the building and they include the side wall as well in the size of the building. This is not quite correct, and we need to have a look at that if it's needed, the accuracy. Now, you can move roads out of the way if you need to do buildings. For instance, if I want to draw these buildings here, I've got this road that's in the way, so I want to move it. I move it, but I can see there's something wrong here. This road is not connected to that road. There's no intersection. Now that means that any routing software would come down this road, but would not identify that there is an intersection there because there's no node connecting. So it will just carry on straight. And it will only, when it gets to the node at the bottom there, will it recognize there is a junction. So you need junctions, and please check for that. So what you do is you select your line tool and you hover over until both are selected, and you press once and escape. And you press once and escape. And now it's connected. So if I move this, I can see that that is correct. Okay, so please check that. It's important that you do that. Now, another thing that I want to show you is that if you need to move a road, here we are. This has got a slight bend crink into it. How are we going to move this whole road in one go? It's quite simple. I take the end of a straight section and I take all the nodes in between. Let's just move that one so it's correct. Then I take the nodes in between. I can do it like this. And then I press L on my keyboard. And I missed one. So so now I'm going to show you how to do it so you don't miss one. So let's go back. Right. Now, so that you can get all of them, you've got the selection key on your keyboard, press S again, and you see it comes up with a lasso. Now, all you need to do is to go along all the nodes. Press S on your keyboard to get back to where you were. Now on my keyboard, and all of them will line up straight away. So I don't need to move each node all along the road. I can use my line tool for straight sections and then just adjust nodes on the curve. Okay, so you can see that you can correct things a lot easier. If you get something like this, you can select all the nodes that you want to move and just move that all in one go. But remember, when you move that all in one go, you're moving other items as well. Right, so just having done that. Now, there's something else I wanted to show you. Ta-da. Yeah. Here we have a series of buildings that are all the same shape and size. So what I can do is press my building tool, use the longest edge and create the building. Use the Extrude tool. Right, now I have selected this. So I've got that selected, and I do what I usually do. I'm going to the select mode, it's selected, and I use just the copy, Control C, which is your usual one, and then Control V, and you have got it again, and you just move it into position, Control V, and don't grab the little thing, move it into position, and Control V, and you've got them all. Now, let's just see if that is an offset. Then I could select all of those because they're all the same height and they will all move the same on the offset. Okay. Right, so that's just your copy and paste. Now, here is, that doesn't look right. Let's just get this out the way. Right. Okay, now here's an interesting building. You want to know about that. First of all, let's have a look at this one. So let's show you this. Look at the shape of this. Okay, so obviously the roof here is not going to help you because the roof goes all the way down to the ground. So the actual shape would be what's on the ground and not what's on the roof. Okay. So when we draw that, the shape of that will be like that. Okay, but that does not connect to the roof. The roof is at a different height. So how do we do this tall building with an offset that has got different heights and different levels? Well, we choose the highest level first. So that is going to be this one here, and I draw the roof shape and select that. Now I estimate how far it's going to be to get down to the next level. So I move this just slightly down and slightly across. Okay, now I'm going to draw in the next level with my building tool or my extrude. I can use the extrude here as well as the building tool. So here, I extrude outwards. And I extrude outwards. Now I can see that this building here goes down the side. So that starts down there. not at the roof here, but down the base is where it connects. So I can't do that yet, but I can do this one here. Right, now that we've got that, I will select all of this and move it down to the footprint. Having done that, I can add this one. So I use my Extrude tool again, and I move it out. And there we are. Now I have now got a building shape that fits the footprint because I have adjusted for all the levels. Now I can see here that there's something else down here. So I can just move, sorry, control there. So I use my select tool, just move it slightly, and then X. And I get that at the correct position and height as well. Okay, now that is different height buildings. Oh, this is a common mistake that you might come across, and it happens quite regularly. You will see it when you try to grab a building and you accidentally grab the X node, which then creates a new node and gets offset. So this sometimes happens. You can either just find out where it should be and move it back, or if it's not connecting too many points, you can just delete it and you will be fine like that. So look out for that. Let's just see if I can get something more complex. Yeah, let's just say that they grabbed this node across to there. Okay. Right, you get something like this. Please don't panic if you accidentally do something like that. Just select the node or use your revert tool. So you use your yellow arrow up at the top here. Let's get rid of that. The yellow arrow at the top here, and just click that. So that you'll get out of trouble. So the moment you've done something wrong, don't panic. You can always use that to go back. Right. Are there any questions at this stage?
There's one question in the chat row. Someone is saying, can you please repeat on the courtyard mapping? I think the other first complex building that you mapped, that
Right.
Courtyard.
Okay, yes, that we can do. That's this one here. Okay. So it's a multi-polygon, right? You can see that that's the whole multi-polygon. I'm going to draw something alongside it rather than play with that. So let's just do. What I do is I use the longer side and I draw the outside of the building. I select the building. I use my building tool to map the inside courtyard. And because the outside is selected, it will line up completely with it. I then press S on my keyboard and hold down Shift and select both. And I use Control B. Control B then creates a multi-polygon, and it is a building. Let's just close some of these. Right, you can see it's a building type multi-polygon. Okay, if I look at that, it's all there, and those are the components. Did that help you?
Yes, sir. I get you. Thank
Now,
you.
if you need to know how many components are in a multi-polygon, select the outline and click double click on the multi-polygon building member, and it brings up a box. And in that box, it will show you there's 2 inners and 1 outer. You can see inner, inner, outer. So that you can see there's 3 pieces to it. So if you need to move that, you need to make sure you've got all 3 pieces selected. Right. So that's select the outer, select the inner, and then move the whole building. Okay. Does that answer your questions? Any more questions?
Thank you, Rafi.
Okay, right now, I want to just help you with 1 or 2 things. Map paint styles. Okay, map paint styles. If you've got map paint styles switched on, the Apple validator is a good one. You can see here, it highlights certain things. Then there's the missing maps, so that you can also have, and when we zoom out, you can see that it shows you where all the errors and clashings are, all right? So that is very helpful. It tells you what the problem is, overlapping buildings. Okay, if you have a node on another building, it will highlight it. So if you accidentally snap to another building, that's what will happen. Oh, by the way, if you want to merge something, let's just say you have a road. Right, let's take your line tool, escape. Right. And you have a road. I can select that, select this, and Shift R, and that will then immediately tag it as the same as the other one. Okay. Now, I need this to be able to touch that one, to join up with that one, but it hasn't. So I put a node on the road by using A on my keyboard and double clicking. I use S. I select the node that I want to move. I hold the Shift key. I select the node it is going to go to, and I press M on my keyboard, and that is linked and joined. Okay. Now, there is one other thing that you can do with your Extrude tool. And I want to show you that, although I don't have an example here. If you've got a gable or an extension, a bay window, that sort of thing, this can be done using the Extrude tool. So you use the X tool and you put nodes at the points of the bay where it starts. You put nodes at the bay where it finishes. Using your Extrude tool and Control, and you can drag it outwards. And you can see that it leaves the angles. And there you have it. Instead of having to do awkward angles like that, using your Extrude tool and press Control. Let's do that again, right? Press Control with my Extrude tool and just drag it outwards, and you can create more complex shapes. Okay. Any questions?
There was actually one question, but Jenny answered how to copy and paste buildings. Yeah, it's already answered in the chat. Maybe just one more thing, how you selected and copied the attributes of the road. What was that?
Okay, what I do is I draw my new road. Okay, what I do is I select one of the roads that has the same or similar tags that I want to use. Actually, it has to be the same tags that I want to use. So if I click on that and I see it says highway unclassified, that's exactly what I want. So I have selected that. I then select my new road and I just hold down Shift and press R, and all the tags transfer over onto that item. So that if you're doing a whole lot of roads and you want them all tagged the same, that's what you do. You can just Shift R, or if you are going to tag it, right? So let's just do this. I'm going to put a new road there, select the road, and I'm going to add the tag, right? So my box comes up, I'm going to add highway, and highway is unclassified. Okay. Now, that was the last item that I selected. Now, all I need to do is when I draw another road, so I press A on the keyboard, I add my new road, I select that, I press plus and enter. Why? Because, let me do that again. If I press plus, so add, okay? Then the last one that I added was highway unclassified. So if I draw another road and add, you see highway unclassified is already there. So if I press enter on my keyboard, it will automatically say okay. Okay, and the taggy is there again, highway unclassified. So you can keep doing that. So as you draw the roads, you just add and enter, add and enter, add and enter. If you're drawing all the same, it doesn't have to be a road, it can be a stream. Now, if the stream that you want has only got one tag, then that is fine. If the road that you want to do has only got one tag, then that is also fine. However, if the road has got 2 or 3 tags, like you want to say it's a one-way, it's a one-way, it's a one-way, then what you need to do is use the select, and then Shift R, okay? So if I add on here, one way, yes, okay. Don't worry about the dead ends, that's okay. So I select that, and then I select my other road, and if I do Shift R, the one way is automatically on there again. So it's again the same. Now this is important. You can see why you keep your paint map paint style switched on, because it quickly highlights, oops, hang on, you've done something wrong here, you need to fix that. Okay, so keep your map paint styles on while you're busy mapping. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Now, here's another thing I want to show you. Let's just say that should.
Hello, Ralph. Can I please ask a quick question? Sorry.
Yes.
I just checked the mapping style, and I can't find those that you are using. So I don't know how to get it working in my JOSM.
Right. Okay. Go up to the top left where it says View. Open up the View, and you've got Map Paint Styles. Go across to Map Paint Styles and select Map paint preferences. Click on that and you will get a new window that comes up that looks something like your imagery window. And you have all the map paint styles down here. And it gives you information about what it is on the various windows that come up for each one if you hover over. And you can select, there's a couple that I use. There's the Apple validator. There's validation colors. There's missing maps, youth mappers. Okay, so those are some pretty good ones to have.
Yeah, my question was, I have checked that, but I can't see those ones that you use in the list on
Right.
JOSM.
At the top, if you start typing validation, and you can see inline validation and missing maps, youth matters, validation checks. So the validator checks is 1. You can use the inline validation. Now, if you want to look for Apple, just type in Apple. Oh, it's not coming up. Okay.
Hi, Ralph.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Apple, they need to add a link to it. I'll share. I
Yeah.
will share
Okay. You're
the
quite
link
right.
later. Yeah.
Apple was one that was developed with the Apple team in conjunction with us, and we were advising them which of the good ones to use to add and which ones aren't. Okay. Right now, one other thing someone asked about squaring buildings. Right, so you've got a whole lot of buildings that are unsquared. How would you select all of this? Right, so I'm in select mode at the moment. So I press S on my keyboard again, and up comes the lasso, and I can select all of those buildings. And it highlights those buildings along with the nodes. Now you can't square the nodes, you can square the building. So to get rid of the nodes, you press down Shift on your keyboard and U. And that deselects all the nodes. So that Shift U, deselect all the nodes, and then press Q on your keyboard. Now you can see what happens if something is too far out. It will make a bad selection for squaring. Now that you have to be careful of. It will do exactly the same if you try to square a round building. Okay, so let's go back and do that again. You can see that so excessive angles, it will not do that. So let's select again. Shift U to get rid of the nodes and Q. And now it works. So extreme angles, it does not work. Be careful of that when you select. Please select a smaller area and check that they are all squared before you go to the next area and do the same. Now, another thing that you need to be careful of is do not press O on your keyboard. If you accidentally press O on your keyboard, it doesn't work, okay? Right. You can see what's happening if I press O on my keyboard. Nothing. Right, so it doesn't help to press O. You will not turn a square building into a round building like that, okay? But yes, you can get Q to square all the buildings when you do it like that. So the lasso is quite useful in grabbing a whole lot. Now, if you need to move buildings, providing they're all moving the same distance, remember I said the taller buildings will move differently to lower buildings as far as offset is concerned, but sorry, as far as footprint is concerned. But if you've got a bad offset, then all of the buildings should move about the same. And you can once again use your lasso, grab the buildings and move all of them at the same time. Okay, and that gets them all in place in one go. But if you have multiple tall buildings that are different heights and you want to move them for the footprint, they have to be done differently. Now, when you're drawing a buildings only, I expect more experienced mappers to understand that you can move the building, move the roads and land use and forests like this out of the way. They may be old. If I choose Control H and the window pops up, and I can see that this has been changed so many times since it was created back in 2010 that it's been continuously changing. Now, if you want to actually check the history and see what it was originally, you can click on the first one, the A node at the top, and that takes you right back to the beginning one, and you can see how it's changed to this one. Not much has been changed here. So all the changes that have been done have been moving the nodes to realign, to realign, to realign. Okay. And we can see now that it's still not very helpful, because since 2010, a lot of development and buildings has gone on. So this is not very helpful, having forests all over the place. But that is not what you're being asked to do. And unless you have actually need to do that, don't move at all. It's going to take a long time. And this is also one of the complex things about relations. If that is part of a multi-polygon, you can't just grab and move it. Okay, you have to find out what all is involved. Right. Are there any more questions about buildings?
There's one in the chat.
Right.
It's quite long. I think it's better you. Let's say I have a width and the length of the building. So how can I draw a specific distance for the building? For instance, 4 meters for 20 meter. Okay. He says, okay, fine. Did you get that question, Rob?
Shabani, okay, I see that. Okay, I'll answer that at the end of the question, end of the session. Right, now for fast mapping. Let's do some fast mapping here. And look at this, right. I want to do some fast mapping. So we are going to use our Mapathono tool here. And that has got batch circle buildings, batch orthogonal buildings. Right, so let's start off with the batch orthogonal buildings. And an orthogonal building, all you need is the width and the length to know the building. So let's use that. I'm first of all going to show you how this works. So I use my line tool and I do a length and a width. I move on to the next building and I do a length and a width. And I move on to the next building and I do a length and a width. Okay, and having done that, I go to Mappathon and I say orthogonal buildings, which is Control, Alt, and F2. And when I do that, it immediately draws all three buildings. So let's do that looking at the imagery now. Right, switch the imagery back on and I'm going to start drawing. So I use my line tool and I draw my buildings. Right, so I select that and remember Mappathon, orthogonal, and there they are drawn. Now, if you have if you have round buildings, it will work the same, but you only need 2 points for each building. So let's do that again. I've got A on my keyboard, so I've got my line tool. I take the one side of a round building and I go across the middle of the building to the other side. I go to the next building and I go to the other side across the middle. I go to the next building and I go across the middle to the other side. And so I can do that. This is very useful if the buildings are all of different sizes. So there you go. And I go to my Mappathon and I do a circle building. And there you've got a whole series of buildings of different sizes in their correct positions. And all you did was use the line tool and went zoom, 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 and changed it. Now, that is very useful if you have got a whole lot of these compounds with 6 or 8 round buildings in each one. You can very quickly do them. They're generally all different sizes. However, if you have a series of all the same size, you can select one, Control, copy, and then you just Control V. That's wrong. I am on here. Control, copy, Control V, Control V, Control V, and you can then do all the same size. So copy and paste for all the same size, or you use the Mappathon tool for orthogonal to do circles of different sizes. Now, the same thing goes if you want to square buildings. So you go to your Mappathon and you select all non-orthogonal buildings and it highlights them. But the problem is that you will get buildings like this as well. Now, the last thing you want to do is to square that or try to square that because it's going to come out wrong. So what you want to do is only square the ones that need squaring. Be very careful when you use that and make sure that the ones that you have selected, you can actually square. So have a look at your Mappathon and you can have a look and play around with that. For L-shaped buildings, you will need 3 sides. So that, let me show you again, press A on my keyboard. So you need 3 sides. Select that and Mappathon L-shaped. And that didn't work, did it? All right, I did that wrong. My humblest apologies. Right, let's just see. Hey. Okay. Oops, my old brain has just forgotten slightly. Right. Becky. My brain's not working at the moment. The L-shaped buildings.
Yeah, the L-shaped building needs practice. I can just share a GIF on how to do that in the chat.
Okay, that would be helpful. It's just it's slipped my mind. Anyway, we'll get back to that. Becky will give you a hand with that in the chat. Any more questions with regard to
Ralph, no questions in the chat, but I've dropped the GIF.
right? Okay. Shabani, if you go up to data and go to set building size or Control Alt B, you can actually set the size of your building in that, and you can see rectangle or circle, rectangle, and you can set the size in that, and then your building will be that automatic size. So that is under oh, come on. Oh, frozen. Okay, there we go. That's under data, set building size or set building shape to circle. Right. Okay, that's something I did show you. In your building tool, okay, you've got the building tool. If you use Alt Z, you can see that it changes to a bullet, and that automatically does a circle. If you go to Alt R, and it goes back to orthogonal. So if you're doing switching between buildings rectangle and buildings circular, knowing that is very helpful. You just press Alt Z and Alt R in the building tool mode, and you can quickly change from one shape to the other. Right. Right. We've been through that. Let's move on again, and let's go to mapping waterways. Waterways are completely different to roads, buildings, or anything like that. Waterways have a direction of flow. So when you start drawing a waterway, you draw in the direction of the flow, but the result is that all the arrows will be showing down, and in the direction of the flow of the water. Waterways do not form conventional nice straight lines like roads do, and they do zigzag. Depending on how good your imagery is will depend on how much you generalize or how many nodes you use to depict the feature. Right, so you use your A tool. The the ones that you use mostly is a stream, river, canal, ditch. Canals can be quite obvious because they are straight. You can have a lot of canals linking various towns. You can have them linking cultivated lands. A ditch can be a drainage ditch alongside a motorway through a town. So you can have a drainage ditch. You can also have drainage ditches alongside farmlands. Streams and rivers speak for themselves. The stream is quite narrow. I think if you can jump over it, so it's 1.5 meters, if you can jump a great distance, it's about 1.5 meters. So, however, rivers will then be wider than that. Now, if you want to draw the riverbank as well, so that you've got a polygon instead of just a center line, we recommend that you don't do it on rivers that are under 10 meters wide. Okay, otherwise we start getting too much clutter. And if you do draw that, you need the polygon and you need the center line, because the center line will in actual fact carry the name of the river and any other information and detail. Like if there's a barrier because you've got rocks or rapids or a weir across, things like that, for navigation purposes and for others. The other thing is intermittent is used quite a lot on streams and rivers and natural waters. This is when it will dry up completely so that there's no water at all. Don't use it if the stream gets low and then high and then low and then high. As long as it is flowing, it is not intermittent. Right, so you first of all, you find your waterways. Look for them. They sometimes look like roads, so be careful. You will always see a road cuts across at right angles to the river. And don't mistake a road and a river. Although in some cases, in very dry areas, there is a road down the river causeway. And when the heavy rains come, of course, it becomes unusable. You then trace it using the line tool and you tag it. Now, this is a good thing with JOSM, is to know your tags. You don't necessarily use presets. Just type in waterway, stream, waterway. So if you know those, the highways, the waterways, the land use ones that are in regular use, you can very quickly just add them in. Right, those are waterways. Roads. Right, mapping roads. Most of the roads we look for in rural areas can be unpaved. We are working in areas of more deprivation in poorer countries. So a lot of the roads that we do will be unpaved. This does not mean that we mark them all, they're not tracks. I'll show you some examples soon. We base our road categories on importance. So if it's between two major villages, it will be a tertiary road. If it's between two small villages or hamlets or small communities, it's an unclassified road. If it's in a city or town, a formal city or town, it will be a residential road and it will have buildings along it. There are often short roads which lead to fields or individual buildings, which you can ignore in most cases. But if they are asking you to connect all of those, a single road off a public road to a private building or set of buildings or farmyard is a service road because it's a driveway. And a service road cannot come off a track. However, from the farmyard onto the farmyards, there will be tracks because that is not a public road. So think in terms of the public road is a road for the public to be able to get to where they're going. The private road takes them onto private property to be at the building or place they need to be. A track is not a public road. It is there for the foresters, the farmers, to be able to get to their fields and to move around on their fields. So do not mistake a track. You do not do a track inside a residential area, even if it's unsurfaced. Right. Mapping roads. You use your line tool for mapping roads. You identify the road and you use A to get your line tool. Now, don't waste nodes. Just remember, OpenStreetMap has millions and millions and millions of nodes already. So if you have a straight section, spread out your nodes along the straight section, but shorten them around the curves. You should be able to get through most curves with about 2-3 nodes. The longer curves will take more. If you are drawing a long road and you see small roads coming off, but you're not going to map them, put a node at the intersection of each one that you're going past. That way, when you want or anyone else wants to add the road to the section, they have a node that they can come off or link to. So that is always a good point rather than adding nodes later. Right, before you start, check the project instructions carefully for the road tagging that they want used and decide on the best. Also, have a look before you do any mapping at the instructions. It will tell you whether you move the imagery to match existing features or whether you move the existing features to match the imagery. That is very important. And please try and check that before you start doing any mapping. Right, let's have a look at roads. Here we've got 2 roads. This is a tertiary on the left and an unclassified on the right. They look identical, but that is because they are identical as far as you actually looking at them or driving along them is concerned. What is important is what they link to. The tertiary road is the road that's going to take you between 2 villages, major villages or towns. The unclassified road is going to take you through to smaller villages or hamlets or communities. Okay, so it's the importance of the road and what it links to or takes you to that decides how you're going to classify it, and not the condition of the road. Here's another example. There's a residential road, okay, and a track. Now, an unclassified road could also look like this track because it may not be used that often, but it is still linking to the communities. Remember, when you're mapping in African towns and villages or rural areas, you very seldom see cars there. That is because cars are only used in exceptional cases or to carry heavy stuff. In most cases, motorbikes, bicycles, and things like that are used. Now, it can be quite wide because they also drive their cattle along the same path or road or track. So please remember that the area you're in, the importance of it and where it goes to. This is a residential road. It's unsurfaced. It's not very wide, but you can see that there are buildings all down either side. All right, let's have a look at this. On the right, you've got a path, and on the left, you've got a path. The path is just wide enough that you might be able to get a 4-wheeled vehicle along that section. But there may be other sections that sort of go in between 2 outcropping rocks, which would be too narrow for a vehicle to go through. So if you actually classify this path as unclassified, and someone tries to drive down there, you will find out that at one point it'll be too narrow because the obstacles are in the way. So please check the width of a path along its length before you create it as a path. As you can see here on the right, a path can be quite narrow as well at some points. It doesn't stop motorbikes from going down there, it doesn't stop bicycles, but you certainly could not get a four-wheeled vehicle down there. So it is in no way going to be an unclassified road. It's no way going to be a service road. So please remember that when you're looking at marking something as a unclassified in a rural area. When you're in towns, we don't use the path there, we use footway, because in most towns, those are designated and created pathways for people and pedestrians and that. So those would be footways and not paths. Paths are for generic items like this out in the countryside, and they can change depending on seasonal conditions and things like that. Right, here we go, other ideas. This is in the Philippines. A residential road and a tertiary road can look identical. It can have buildings all the way along. The only difference is the tertiary road will be going through this town and on to the next town, whereas the residential road would only be serving the community inside the town. So it won't be a continuous road onto the next town. So while they may look the same and they may be paved and identical, the classification would not necessarily be the same. So once again, it's not the condition and width of the road, it's what it's being used for that accounts for the classification. Right, now, when we're drawing rivers and roads, they do cross each other. And there's only three ways of importance to you about how they cross. The most well-known to us is a bridge, which is a structure that goes over above a river and helps roads, railways, and things like that. The next one is a culvert, which is a concrete or PVC pipe which goes underneath the road and allows the water to go through that way. The third one is a ford. That is where the river and the road are at the same level. And quite often it's on dry riverbeds or streams where you can cross over. It doesn't get too deep and you don't have to worry. In this example that we have here on the left, there is a concrete causeway there, which gives a very firm base for you to cross over the waterway. But a lot of them in the rural areas do not have concrete causeways, and you're just driving across the riverbed. It's important to know which is a ford, because that may be totally impassable in heavy rain fall season. So that is important to let people know. Right, fords are waterways that are crossing where a highway crosses a river or a stream. And is generally can be seen, there's the road, there's the waterway, and you can see a discoloration. In most cases, the road breaks up a little bit where it crosses, and that's a ford. There's no shadowing to show a bridge or a culvert, so it's definitely a ford. And you tag that as ford, yes, and okay. The one thing that you must know is this is the case where the road and the waterway share a node, and that node is tagged as a ford. There's no levels because the road and the waterway are at the same level. Right, mapping bridges. You can recognize a bridge. A bridge has a discoloration from the roadway. It may have parapets on the sides. It has a deep shadow across the length of the bridge, and not just a shadow at the waterway. the bridge, you need to split that at two ends using P on your keyboard, and you split the road out, select the road, and you add layer is bridge, yes, and layer 1, because the bridge is above the water. So it will be layer 1. Okay. Looking for a bridge, you don't find a bridge here. What you're seeing is the culvert. Now you can see the culvert is the width of the waterway, and not the shadow of the culvert is the width of the waterway and not the whole width of the bridge. So that will indicate it also be below the road. So you can see that there's a culvert there. Once again, the culvert is now of the water because it's the water that goes underneath the road. So you split the waterway and you layer it -1 or -1 because it is below the road. Okay. It's tagged as a tunnel culvert and layer -1. Right. Let us now go back to the JOSM. And let's just see. Have I got the one I want? No, I haven't. Okay, that's naughty. Okay, right. Waterways. Right. Have a look at waterways here. Oh, we've got a number of roads and things here, but that's okay. Let's have a look at what we've got here. This is quite clear. You can see that a waterway comes from a fan downwards and travels downwards and downwards into the main river. And they should all connect up. And if you have a look, they are generally connect in a Y shape. So that will help you to decide which way the water goes, because the Y shape is they flow into each other. You can see that is possibly, but that is not always the case, right? But it does help to identify. Now, another way that you can identify is by using contour shapes. Right, so let's use this two. There's open cycle map and open topo map. And if I switch that on, and I can see I have got contours. The contours are numbered, that's 750, 800, and you can see that they go uphill. Any waterway will flow down the valley. Okay, now, if you want to be able to use this over your imagery, select the open cycle map and go to the little eye shape on the right here, which is changing. I can change the visibility so that I can see through the open cycle map. I just keep moving that down until I'm happy with what I can see underneath. But what happens is that you start to lose the contours. So I go down to what is called the gamma, and I increase the gamma. And the gamma then darkens the contouring. And now I can see the contours and the background imagery. So I can now see where the valleys are and be able to work out which is downhill and through to the main river. Now, drawing the waterway, I press A on my keyboard. I start at the top. Now, I can't see the waterway, but the trees here tell me that there is a waterway here. Now I will follow this downhill, and you can see I used short and long. Now I'm starting to see the waterway. Now the shadow is not necessarily where the waterway is. Have a look carefully. The shadow might just be on one side of the waterway. Escape. Let me show you as I zoom in. I'll press A on my keyboard. That is the width of the stream. And it's 2.9 meters. I can see that on my measurement tool down the bottom. It's 2.9 meters. So it is a stream. Right, so I select that and I add waterway stream. Okay, right, and I've got that. So press A and I carry on. Put a node where you see another waterway coming in so that you can link up to that later if need be. Okay. I'm not going to go all the way, but you get the idea. Once I get down to the bottom here, I make sure that I connect up to the center line of the main river. Right, and now that is correct. Waterway stream, and that is waterway river. Now mine are different colors because I've got my validation colors lit up so that I can see which one is a river and which one is a stream. Right, now, if I want to extend, I want to draw in a multi-polygon for you. So I'm quickly going to extend this. All I need to do is go up to my download. And I've got this area here and I want to download, and I get a slippy map jumps up and it's showing me that that's the area that I have got selected. I can download that onto the existing layer, or I can download that onto a new layer. So download, and I get that extension. Stop that. Okay, right. So I have got this, and I can see that it's already drawn in. I'm going to do this again. Don't just use the delete button. It is a multi-polygon. So what you need to do is double click on the multi-polygon, open up the window and delete the entire relation, okay? Right, once you've deleted the relation, you can delete. So that is one thing you need to remember. Right, now, so remember I said, how wide is it? So I measured this and it tells me it's 167 meters across. That is, I think, more than 10, so I can accept that. Right. Now, first of all, I will not draw a long section of waterway. I just want a short section as the multi-polygon, and that will be the section that contains the islands. So drawing in, I link up to the other one. Now my map paint styles tells me that I did link to those points, so that is good. So now I add, and what I do is I put natural water, okay, and add water, not waterway, just water, and the water is river. Okay, now that is the new tagging for a waterway a waterway polygon. It used to be riverbank, waterway riverbank, and it's changed now to natural water, or water river, or water stream. It cannot be a stream because the stream is not 10 meters wide unless you're an Olympic jumper. Right, now to add, just remember the buildings, press A on the keyboard, and I draw the island. Right, select, hold down the shift and select the outer, and on tools, it's create multi-polygon or Control B. But what you want this is to be tagged as something separate to the waterway. So instead of leaving it as tagging it as a waterway, you add it as a place. Now, because it's tiny, you do not use island. You use islet, I-S-L-E-T. So it's a place islet. Okay, and then you select the both and Control B, and your multi-polygon is created. You can see that the island is now separate from the water. It doesn't get a waterfall. You can continue to add islands. Press A on the keyboard, draw another islet, select, add, and I see a place islet is already there. So I press enter and there it is. Now what I do is I select that, I hold down my shift and I select the outer, and I say update multi-polygon. And I update the multi-polygon and it adds the new section, right? So now the multi-polygon has got that added. And it tells me that this now consists of 3 components, 1 outer and 2 inners. Okay, I can add another one and so on and so forth. Now, if you want to change the outside, you can move nodes. Okay, that does not affect the multi-polygon. You can even add a node. Okay, you can add nodes as well, and all you need to do is save that, and that will then be saved into your OpenStreetMap, saved onto OpenStreetMap, and saved into your multi-polygon. But if you want to add anything or a new line or anything like that, you need to update your multi-polygon. Right.
Ralph, there's a question in the chat. I tried to answer it. They say it's better if you get a standard which shows either is a river or a stream or a canal. So I just said the OSM wiki can help. Is there any other way?
I just use the measurement tool, and if it's wide enough for someone to jump over, then it's a stream. If it's wider than that, then it's a river. And that's the best guide that we could use. Once you start mapping, you'll start very quickly get to understand what would be a stream. For instance, these short little pieces running down into the main river, those short little pieces would be streams. They don't have enough width and enough rainfall and enough distance to gather enough water to be wide enough to be a river. So those would be short. Plus, of course, because of the steepness of the hill here, they'd probably be intermittent because the runoff would be so quick that, that there would not be a continuous stream. So in the dry period, these are probably very dry. So those would be intermittent. Right. Let's okay. Let's go back to this and now some of the things that you need to be careful of is that sometimes a waterway can be very close to another waterway, but that one is flowing down that way, and this one is flowing down this way. If I zoom out, I can see it goes down to the stream there, and this goes down in that direction there. So it's important to find out where the high point is to make sure that your waterways do not connect to each other across a hill. Generally, in areas like this, you'll find that there are roads and tracks and things like that that run along the ridge of the, and sometimes they will wind along the contour path or down on the side of the mountain. And so it will highlight where these hills and mountains are. Please be careful when you're checking. We don't want to see this sort of thing. When a waterway is going downhill, it comes to an intersection like this. Sometimes people get confused and they will carry on the waterway like that. I realize there's a waterway down here and they will carry on like that. Now, this is what I call doglegging. It happens with roads as well. That's not very helpful because the waterway is now ended up going in the wrong direction. If that happens, all you need to do is split. So P of the keyboard splits the waterway, and then you need to change the direction. So you press R on your keyboard and it changes the direction. R on the keyboard changes direction. This works with roads as well as waterways. So there you are. It's very quick and easy to change the direction if you find that it's wrong. Now, here we are looking at roads and waterways. I want to show you, let's just say, this road, this path crosses the waterway, okay? Now I need for a path, because the path does not have a bridge or anything like that, I merge the two, right? And I don't put anything other than a ford or anything like that. I don't do that because for a path, it doesn't have a ford, it doesn't have a culvert or anything like that. You cross either wading through stepping stones, use a boat. So there is just a shared node when a path crosses a waterway. If you have a footway, there's generally a bridge or some method of doing that, and you will mark that. Right, now here I have the road. That's crossing the waterway, and this is a ford. So what I need to do is select the node that's sharing the road and the waterway and add ford. Yes, okay. And it adds the ford, and you can see that the red highlight saying, whoa, something's wrong. has disappeared because the validator is not quite happy with that. The road is going through the waterway. It's a ford. Here would be another ford. You can see here that the road crosses, but there's no bridge and there's no culvert. So that's a ford again. I don't think I've got any bridges in this area, which is unfortunate. Right. I'm going to come out of this. Are there any questions with that?
No questions in the chat. Maybe just from me. There is this new imagery, the open topo map. Does it work the same as contour? Because it has contours. Does it work the same as open cycle map?
Right, you've got open cycle map and open topo map. I'll switch on now. And you can see here that I've got open topo map switched on, but you can't see anything. That's because okay, here it comes. Open topo map takes a bit longer. It's similar, but is a lot more detailed. And you can see that open topo map can also be made transparent. I think no. Okay, transparency doesn't work on open topo map, or it should. Yes, there we are. Open topo map, transparency doesn't work. Does it? Yes, it does. Okay, got it working. But you can see that using the transparency is not as good here because you can't see as well through this. Open cycle map is better for being able to see through to the imagery below.
Awesome, thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Karen.
Yes, so I recently opened a task that had not been mapped. The waterway had not been mapped. And in the earlier session, Becky said that we should not leave waterways hanging. So how do I handle that?
All right. If you have opened a project, you need to read the instructions of the project. If the project says buildings only, then you should be mapping buildings. If it says waterways, then you map waterways. So a project is created for a specific purpose, and each project is different. So you need to read the instructions in the project to decide what you should or should not be mapping. If you want to do things or learn how to do waterways, you can go and look for a place in the country somewhere that has got waterways, and you can try drawing them and saving them. But when you save them, please put in there that you want your work reviewed so that people can check it. But if you do that, we can't check it as part of your DQI because we don't know where you're mapping. So please map on projects on the task manager and remember to use the data quality hashtag.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe to add on what Ralph said. So in case you get a task and you find you should map the waterway and you map it slightly into the next task so that your neighbor can pick it up and continue with the mapping. Yeah.
But then won't that be hanging since I'm not continuing from any other person's work?
It will be hanging, but the next person will continue and take it until maybe the main how do I say, the main river. Yeah, so that's how even if you find another, let's say another task that is for mapping waterways, you might find like in the entire tasks that you've selected, there are no waterways mapped. So you map it and then you map it slightly towards the next task, so that even if you're to select the next task, you just continue that same waterway until it's complete.
Okay, thank you, I've understood.
Ralph,
Yes.
there is a question in the chat. I'm joining this session just now, but I haven't explained already what. Can you please explain the relation in roads?
Right. I'm going to move on now to relations. Yes. We haven't done filters yet, so we're being a bit slow. I think relations in roads. We will do that on another session. I think we should actually do our history and filters at this moment. So let's go through on the feature history. If you press select an item or a feature and Control H, remember that, Control H, you will get this dialog box which comes up. The dialog box tells you the very first, it gives you the history of the feature, who first drew it, the date that it was drawn, and how many times it's been altered or changed. You use the left-hand button, and you can select any one of those to see what is the original and what it is now. In this, alongside here, it gives you what it was and what it's been changed to. If neither of those have been changed, then you can assume that all the person did was move the nodes to be able to adjust the feature. Now, on here, it has two items. It has the person's name, username. Now, that username will take you to their profile. So you can click on that and it will take you to their profile. Their profile will tell you their history, the number of edits they've done, any map notes and traces and things like that. And it also gives you a means of contacting that person direct as an individual. It also gives you the change set number of that feature. And if you need to do a revert or anything like that, or quote that because of very bad mapping, then that is the number that will help you to find the change set again. Right, now, another thing that this will tell you is it will tell you what imagery was used to map originally, and also the imagery that was used for the changes. So that is also very helpful here. It will also give you the change set was used. So if this was mapped or changed in a project, you will see the project number there, which should appear in the change set. So that's the feature history, and that gives you quite a load of information to go on. And that will help you. It will also tell you whether the person is using ID editor or using JOSM, because that is important if you're going to give them instructions on how to improve their the error that they are making. So you need to check what editor they are using so you can give them the correct instructions. Right, filters and selections. Filters allow you to switch things on and switch things off. And this is quite useful if you've got a very, very busy or cluttered task that you're trying to look at, validate, or check, or even map. The filter panel allows you to temporarily disable or optionally hide certain items and objects. That is, once again, let's just see, is, of course, it's not showing up there. Right, in your panel on the side, you can get that. If you go to Windows here, you've got filter there, and you can add that as a panel. Or if you've got it here on the left-hand side here, you can switch on or off the filter panel as well from the side panel here. Right, so in the filter, you can add, but I haven't got, so let's just download. Right, you can add by going to the plus sign. And in the plus sign, you have got strings. Now, the string that you use, here are all the kinds of strings that you can use. If you want to do, let's say you want to select because you want to square or make sure all the buildings are squared. One of the strings you could use is typing in buildings. Oh, be careful. It is not buildings. It is just building. Okay. Be careful. If you get a spelling wrong, then you are not going to be able to select or do. It will only recognize if it is exactly correct. So there we are, and a colon. Now, we want just the buildings that have got 4 nodes, okay? So what I type in here is nodes, and that is four. All right, it's telling me something is not right there, I think. Building, okay, what's missing is building, yes. Okay, nodes 4. Okay, that should do. So I submit the filter. Now, if I have got buildings in here, let's just add a few. Just hang on, data layer. Let's just Bing and open it up so I can see it. Right, so let's add some buildings, and remember the mapathoner, so I can just quickly add a whole lot of buildings here. Select the buildings, remember mapathoner, orthogonal buildings, and they're all there, right? Now, if I, data layer, my screen's gone blank. Oops, right. All right, I've got things onto the wrong layer by the looks of it. So let's go back. All right, that doesn't work correctly. Sorry, guys. Let's just see if I. All right, I lost things when my screen went blank. Let's try again. Right. Data layer. Yeah, yeah, okay. Press A on my keyboard. Right, select orthogonal buildings. This is not working.
Hi, Ralph. I think
Yeah.
because there is a filter, the last.
Ah, okay, you're right. Okay, duh. Sorry, duh. Silly me. Okay, right. So the filter was on. Okay, now what I want to do. Select everything else out. All right, no, this isn't working. I've got it wrong. Okay. Everything else is selected out and just the buildings. And let's just show what happens here. If I had a different building, so I'm going to do an extrude. Okay, now that is not 4. So if I exclude everything else, you will see that all I have is the buildings with 4 nodes. This building on the left here did not come up because it's not there. So if I select now, you see that it will only select the building with 4 nodes. It does not select the other building. Okay, so buildings with 4 nodes, I use Shift U to get rid of the nodes and press Q on my keyboard, and I can square all of those. So remember, we were talking about if you select all unsquared buildings, you won't be able to do that because some may not be for squaring them. Some may already be angled because that's the way they are. So this would be the alternate way for you to find it, just by selecting all buildings with only 4 nodes. And that's using the filters, okay? You've got buildings, if you want to use them, you've got buildings with equals star, that will be all buildings. Highways equals star, that will be all highways. Waterways equals star, will be all waterways. If you want a specific one, you can say waterway stream, and that will get it. But be careful, don't add the S, waterways. It is waterway only, the same way as building only, and it will accept that. Right, that was filters. Conflict resolution. Conflicts are something that occur because there's a number of different people mapping all at the same time. So while you are mapping within your task, the road that you are moving might go across 2, 3 different tasks that other people might be working on. And the problem there is that you might download that road, draw a couple of buildings, save that, draw another couple of buildings, save that, and then start moving the road. but in the time that you've been mapping, someone else has opened up the task alongside you, has moved that road and saved that. That means there's a newer version of the road that you've already downloaded. So when you try to save your changes to that road, it's going to say, well, someone else has already changed this road, so you can't save it the way it is. And you will need to, in actual fact, you will need to fix that and decide how you're going to do that. And that is done through the conflict resolution box. You get two versions. You get your version and you get their version. And in some cases, you will only select your version, or you may select their version. Now, it may be that the road that you have got isn't a road, so you've deleted it. But what has happened is that that has left a node on a road, or that's deleted a node on another road where it connected. And there's a newer version of that that says that that node does exist. So you have to decide, if you deleted a road, do you want that node on the other road to remain? In which case you use their version. If you want that node to be deleted, you use your own version, and that will delete the node on there. But you must understand what the conflict is, okay? Right, this is the kind of thing that you will get. You'll get a notice when you try to save, the conflict detected, and uploading failed because the server has a newer version of one of your nodes, ways, or relations, which is what I explained. It tells you which way it is, and it has a version 3 to your version 2. Now, what you do is you can either synchronize the entire data set, but that's not advisable. The best way to do it is to synchronize the way only. And that way you can select what you're synchronizing and what you're changing and doing. Okay. Up comes, it says one conflict, click OK. If you see too many conflicts, then it might be better to forget about your local modification and go back. And if your road was the last thing that you changed, just undo the changes to the road and try and save that way. At least then you won't lose the buildings that you've saved. Right. Right. This is the kind of thing that you will see when a conflict comes up and you're trying to resolve it. You've got green on the left and the right. That shows you that those nodes are okay. Now, this section of the road shows that the nodes have been changed, but the section that you worked on, the red ones, have not been changed. So what you want to do is you want to keep their nodes and your nodes. So you want to merge the two. You can do that by clicking freeze once you've merged them. So you will move those nodes across into here and those nodes across into here and freeze. That will merge them, and then you click apply resolution. And that should solve the problem. When you go back and try to save, it may come up with another conflict, or it may just let it go through. If it comes up with another conflict, you go through this process again. Are there any questions on that?
No questions in the chat yet.
Right, let's just quickly move on to land cover. Okay, land cover is not what we like to use. What we are more regularly using is oh, come on. land use. All right, sorry, my brain's a bit slow. Land use. So what we want is land use. Land use tells you what the ground is actually being used for. So a residential area means that the ground is being used for residential use and not farmland. Now, we cannot have a land use inside a land use because that creates a conflict, the same way as having a building inside a building creates a conflict, and that doesn't work. So what we need to do, as you can see in the example on the right, the way that is being drawn is very generalized, and you can see that there's quite a lot of land, farmland inside that land use, residential. So the idea would be to draw the area as land use, farmland, and then create a multi-polygon with land use residential inside it. And that would then solve the problem where the buildings are very close. Either that, or if you don't want to do a land use farmland, is then to draw the individual areas as land use residential. Sorry. Now, the difference between land use and land cover. Land use is what the land is actually used for. So if the people are growing grass for commercial purposes, in other words, it's turf that they will then dig up and transport to someone's home and lay the turf there. They are growing the grass for a commercial purpose. So the land use would be grass. If it's just a lawn that is covering a landscaped area of the motorway, then that is not land use, that is land cover. The grass is covering the land, it is not used for anything else but decorative. So that's the difference between land use and land cover. Okay. Right. That's an interesting little shortcut key. Instead of actually always going and clicking on the plus sign on your JOSM to open up your layers, all you have to do is click, is to use Alt-A, and it will open up the layers dialog for you, the layers window for you. Okay, and you can add the layers that way. Right. Are there any questions on land use?
No questions in the chat.
Right, we did multi-polygons and relations. We haven't done relations. We're running a bit over time. How are we doing, Becky? Are we okay?
I think we're okay. We are left with a few slides. If they can hold on for a few more.
Okay, yeah, just a few more slides. Right. Let's talk about relations. There are two types. There's the multi-polygon and there is the line relation. The relations are different. You have the multi-polygon, which is combining a number of different polygons into one single grouping. A relation that is a line relation is one that combines a whole lot of different items into one. Now, an example of that would be a bus route. A bus route would use Mortimer Road plus Commercial Road plus Financial Road plus Edward Road plus King Road, and each one of those are different roads. So if you click on each one of those roads and you include them into your relation, you don't need to draw a line. The line is automatically there using the roads. The same way is you can share. If you have, let's just say in the example that is showing you down the bottom here, let's say that's a national park, and the red is an administrative boundary. instead of drawing nodes on top of nodes, what you can do is select the area that is shared. So it is the same line is shared by both areas, the national park and the administrative boundary. You split the national park at the points where the national boundary joins it. And then what you do is you combine those nodes into the national boundary as part of the relation, and you combine those nodes into the national park as part of a relation. And that way you do not need to actually redraw each shape over the top of the other one. Right, now I'm going to just quickly go back to my JOSM and I'll try and explain that. So select right, so I've got natural wood and a road, or I want to use that as a road, but this in actual fact is going to be part of the road. So what I could do is separate the road, right? So, and separate that. So I want to use that line as the road. So that's what I would do. I would link it to there and select merge. Right, now I only have one line there and I have this is broken. So what I do is I select that line and it becomes a part of this. Right, and I can select this and that. Didn't want to do that. Okay. And I want to create a new multi. It's not working, is it? All right, I'm losing this now. I'm not quite sure how to get the relation working. Sorry, folks. I'm getting a bit old now. Right, Becky.
Ralph, because of time, can we do this in the next session?
Yeah, okay. Okay, yes. Because of time.
Yeah, otherwise it's quite a process. And I think you're also exhausted.
Yeah, sorry. It's been a long day. Okay, right, folks. Sorry. We'll continue that on another session, but it's not going to affect you at the moment. One thing that I would say is administrative boundaries are complex relations. Coastlines are complex relations. Bus routes and train routes and that are complex relations. The best thing for you to do is to leave them alone at this stage and don't change, alter, or affect them. So select a road. If it tells you that it is part of some kind of route relation, please don't make any changes. You can move the nodes to realign, but don't delete or change anything. That's the best advice I can give you at the moment. Sorry about that. It is getting a bit late. Back to you, Becky.
Awesome. Ralph, if you can go to the work plan slides, it would be nice. Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that there are some data quality and humanitarian mapping recordings that are awesome for you to watch. And then we have added, thanks to Ralph, we have added another project, another roads project. So from now until the validation session on Monday next week, please let's continue mapping and yeah, mapping those two projects, and that's it. And then maybe the next slide, there's some additional resources. Yeah, there's some additional resources for you right there. And just a recommendation when you are mapping land use and natural covers, please refer to the OSM wiki and feel free to ask in the channel for support. Otherwise, thank you. Thank you so much, Ralph. I've actually learned a lot. I was looking forward for this session. I've learned so many things that I did not know. And yeah, have a great day every day. I'm going to, I hope the recordings will be processed as soon as possible, and I'll share them as soon as I get them. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So sorry, I am getting a little bit tired at the moment, and the brain's not working, but thank you very much for being patient and listening to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raf. See you some other time.
Oh, thank you.